Leaders make other people better. Simple as that. And that fits George Pyne to a T. George Pyne is a leader who makes everybody around him better.
He inspires people by kind of getting in the trenches with them. He's not someone that lives in an ivory tower. He believes in leading the charge and you know, being there for the people that work with him and for him.
You never for a second hesitate that he's honest, that he's candid, that he means well.
He's a man's man. He works hard, he plays hard, he likes to have a good time.
He's just a lot of fun. And he also is very adept at business and what's happening. He sees the big picture of business.
He thrives on value creation.
He takes areas that people don't think of and he builds businesses.
Lots of people have ideas, but sort of what separates people who have ideas to real leaders are people who can make those ideas into something successful. And I think George has demonstrated that on several different levels.
George and I and my brothers were born and raised here in Milford. George was a hard worker at everything he did, academically, athletically. So as you know, in him being the oldest, I always found it kind of a chore to try to keep up. I was the one always having a lot of fun. But he was a very good role model, always really trying hard at everything he did. He was the captain of his football team and his basketball team, the president of the student council and the class president, and he was always, you know, always driven to achieve.
His mother was always very nice, always friendly and compassionate and religious, and the father is like the ultimate salesman. He doesn't take no for an answer. I think he has a drive. He's like a bull. Like George definitely picked up on that.
His parents both worked when he was little, so he hung out with his grandmother a lot, and she started a flower shop, and he would go on runs with her and worked, you know, kind of side by side with her for years.
I remember she used to talk to us about stocks, and she seemed to teach George a little bit more about the business ends of things.
Football was really important to my family. I think it just was something that was in the blood. You know, with my grandfather playing, my dad playing, and then all three of my brothers playing. It just was a main focus in my family. When they were young, I remember my dad running drills.
We'd put all the gear on in the middle of August, and he would just run us through drills. And he would just pound us and race us. But so we had our own little mini football camp.
My grandfather was the first 300-pound guy on the Patriots, and they would go full out contact, headgear, everything. But that was one thing I was just like, boy, I wouldn't want to go against my grandfather that big and that strong.
George he was very good playing football. You know, he was the captain at Milford High School, he was a captain at Brown, he was a leader.
It just built and framed him to be who he is today for, you know, his leadership, his success, hard work, being part of a team, being a leader on the team.
I think George's involvement in college football as a player completely has helped define George Pyne as a leader. He's a team player, and he's a leader of other men. I mean, you learn that on the field of play, whether it's football field or other, but clearly George learned that, and you see that every day in his business life.
You know, he was an offensive lineman. You know, they're the nuts and bolts of football. He's not a flashy quarterback. He's not a wide receiver who wants the ball. You know, he wants to create a hole for a running back to get a touchdown.
When you think about George, he's a hard-working guy, one of the hardest ones out there. When you think about teamwork, he values everyone that works with and for him. You know, those are qualities I think you learn when you're on that field. So I think he took a lot off the field, and it's translated very well for him in his current role.
We met in 1984. I thought he was the coolest cat in town. He drove his grandmother's Cadillac around campus, you know, with his hand on the steering wheel like this and, you know, like this. And he had on a derby hat with a feather out the side. And he was just, you know, big man on campus, and I just thought he was the greatest. And he was so nice, and I had heard great things about him. And he was so respectful of me. The first time he kissed me, he asked me if he could kiss me, which I later found out his sister told him to do, but it worked. And we broke up for a little while and then got back together, and we've been married 23 years.
George was not always as big and powerful as he is now in the sports industry. He got his start right here in Atlanta as a green kid right out of college, sort of bumping around trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life.
His job actually didn't start right away when we moved to Atlanta, so I took 2 jobs to pay the rent. So if he ever gets too big for his britches, I remind him of when I supported him, and he laughs.
Well, I could see very early on some seeds of greatness in George, because when he came to work with us, we threw George into some big, intense projects in the trade show business, and George quickly grasped that. And when I gave him a challenge like, hey, take the NFL experience from the Super Bowl, how could we do that with NASCAR? George dove into it, came up with some great solutions, so great that the France family hired him away from us to go do it.
I first met George, he was at Portman Company, and they were pitching NASCAR on a new opportunity, and he was taking the lead of the project, and Brian had a private meeting with him, and I was interested shortly after he left to see what Brian thought, and so I went in and Brian said, "How did it go? How did it go?" He said, "Really, really good." He said, that guy can help us.
It takes somebody that can come in and look at it from a distance and then get right into the trenches and say, hey, here's some things that maybe you're missing, or here's some things that I think could happen. Hey, this sport's way bigger than anybody even realizes.
We were a bunch of teams. We didn't have a real TV package, and the commercial aspect of that sport was coming together, and we needed someone that understood the driver's side and also the commercial side.
Well, we keep going forward, and we keep trying to grow the sport, build awareness of the sport, and reach new fans and take our product to millions of people. You know, we've only been on TV for about 10 years on a full-time basis, so we think the best is yet to come.
We spent, many nights, framing up what the new NASCAR would look like. When we both joined, and George got there a little earlier than I did, it was the number 4 or 5 sport for sure. I mean, and after, some great years at NASCAR, I mean, the sport certainly emerged from its roots, became truly a national platform that sponsors and fans were gravitating to all over the country.
The sport went through a huge growth spurt where licensed merchandising and die-cast cars just took off, and the fans were just swarming to the racetrack, lined up, and the face of NASCAR changed, in my opinion, just on the sheer numbers and popularity of the sport.
That's why Bill France Jr. loved him so much, that he was creating opportunities for NASCAR that were there, but no one had spotted and no one had gone out and had the will to work at it day in, day out to make it happen.
And whether that was totally reinventing the licensing and marketing and creating a whole sales group that was focused on the broader industry, bringing Nextel into the sport. You look at the national stage and the international stage we achieved with the television agreements and the consolidation of the media packages, and George's role in that and the leadership in that was just stellar, and he was able to help create this environment for the whole sport and the whole industry that remains today.
When he went to IMG, in many respects, I think he's transformed IMG. IMG looks very differently today than it did when George joined them. And a big part of that was the move into college sports, which I think is a big part of their earnings and growth. And George certainly had a vision for it.
The vision that we put together back in 2006 is today exactly what we wanted it to be. So it was to me, pretty impressive that we started off with a clean sheet of paper and we turned it into exactly what we said we were going to 7 years later.
Our academy business, our licensing business, our consulting, our business development, he takes areas that people don't think of and he builds businesses.
George connects dots. So there are a lot of things that would not have existed without him.
We all know what IMG has become under George's leadership, especially the college sports platform.
Kind of the jet fuel that he put on our business with the acquisitions made by IMG have done nothing but continue to help grow the pie, and that's been good for all of us.
College sports is just on an incredible run right now. The passion, the demographics, the sponsorships that are gravitating to that platform, and once again, George, I think in many respects, created that.
I think his greatest accomplishment is his family.
I think George over the years has been able to create what I often call life blend. You know, both work and family do blend together for him.
You know, we've been to Super Bowls, we've been to Wimbledon, we've been all over the world together, but I think he really enjoys going to an 8th grade football game more than anything else.
He's such a proud dad, and he's so supportive, and you could see it in his children.
He can be like serious and like into work, but as soon as he gets home, it's just like family, family, family.
It's always fun hanging out with him and talking about sports, life, school, friends, and pretty much everything.
With all the success my dad's had, he never wants to show it. He always just wants, he always wants to be humble and giving all the kids good advice on every single scenario in life.
I heard the saying that every daughter ends up marrying like the characteristics of her father, and I do hope that happens for me because he's so nice, he's so smart, he's ambitious, like he's so funny.
I don't know what our future holds, but I know it'll be fun, I know it'll be exciting, and I know we'll do it as a family. And you know, I've always told him that the best risk he could ever take is on himself, because no one will outwork him. He's so smart at everything that he does. So whatever it is, it'll be an adventure, and we'll do it together.